You walk down the chilled aisle of your local supermarket, surrounded by a sea of blue, green, and red caps, and you make a choice based on habit. You reach for the same plastic jug you have bought for years, assuming that in the United Kingdom, where agricultural standards are touted as world-leading, milk is simply milk. You believe that the liquid inside that bottle is fresh, wholesome, and derived from cows grazing on rolling green hills, just as the pastoral imagery on the label suggests. But the data hidden within supply chain audits and nutritional reports suggests a starkly different reality. What you are actually buying is often a highly engineered product, stripped of its natural character, standardized with permeating fillers, and sourced from industrial systems that prioritize yield over animal welfare or human health. But here is what is truly fascinating. The difference between the high-quality dairy you think you are buying and the white water sitting in your fridge right now isn't accidental. It is a calculated economic strategy. Let me show you how the illusion of choice is masking a crisis in quality, and exactly which 12 brands have fallen the furthest from the standard you deserve. You're watching Protect Our Cart, revealing the truth on your table. If you value this depth of analysis and want to safeguard your family's grocery choices, subscribing ensures you don't miss the next investigation. To understand why we are issuing a do not buy warning for these specific brands, we first have to dismantle the myth of the British dairy aisle. For decades, milk was considered a sacred staple, a product so simple it couldn't be corrupted. However, a quiet revolution has taken place in the processing plants that supply the UK's major retailers. The problem begins with a process known as standardization. When milk leaves a cow, its fat and protein content varies based on the season, the breed, and the feed. But supermarkets demand total consistency. To achieve this, the milk is separated into skim and cream, then recombined to precise, legally minimum percentages. In the brands we are exposing today, this process is pushed to its absolute limit. They are not just standardizing, they are value engineering the product, removing the premium fats to sell as butter or cream, and leaving you with a fluid that barely meets the legal definition of whole or semi-skimmed milk. This degradation of quality is compounded by the fake farm phenomenon. You might see a brand name that sounds like a quaint family-run estate in Devon or Yorkshire. It sounds traditional. It feels trustworthy. Yet, in many cases, these farms do not exist. They are marketing inventions created by massive conglomerates to disguise the fact that the milk is pooled from intensive, indoor megadairies, where cows may never see a blade of grass. This isn't just a matter of ethics. It changes the chemical composition of the milk itself. Cows fed on high-protein soy and corn concentrates in confinement produce milk with a different fatty acid profile, higher in inflammatory omega-6s and lower in the beneficial omega-3s found in grass-fed dairy. When you buy these specific brands, you are paying a premium for a product that is nutritionally inferior to what your grandparents drank, all while being sold a fairy tale of the British countryside. But how did we get here? To understand the collapse in quality among these 12 offenders, we have to look at the history of the supermarket price wars that began in the early 2010s. They slashed prices to rock-bottom levels, 4 pints for a pound, knowing they would lose money on every bottle sold, just to get you into the store to buy other, more profitable items. While this seemed like a win for your wallet, it was a catastrophe for the product. The relentless pressure to lower costs forced the supply chain to consolidate. Small, quality-focused family farms went bankrupt by the thousands, unable to produce milk at the prices supermarkets demanded. They were replaced by industrial efficiency models designed to squeeze every drop of volume out of the system. The brands that survived this era did so by cutting corners. They extended shelf lives through aggressive pasteurization that kills beneficial enzymes and alters the taste profile, resulting in that cooked or sterile flavor many of us have unfortunately grown used to.
They compromised on packaging, using cheaper plastics that can leach compounds into the milk over time. And most critically, they severed the connection between the consumer and the source. The 12 brands we are about to break down are the ultimate result of this race to the bottom. They represent the victory of logistics over nutrition and profit margins over public trust. We are now living in the aftermath of that price war, and the casualty is the quality of the glass of milk you pour over your cereal every morning. It is time to identify exactly who is selling you short. You might know them better as the charming, rustic-sounding farms that suddenly appeared on supermarket shelves a few years ago to replace the stark white value labels. If you look for Creamfields Farm on a map of the British countryside, you will not find a single cow, barn, or tractor. That is because it does not exist. These brands were created by marketing departments to manufacture an illusion of provenance, planting a subconscious suggestion that this milk comes from a specific dedicated patch of green earth. The reality is starkly different. This milk is the result of milk pooling on a massive scale. It is the aggregate output of the most intensive, high-yield dairy operations in the UK, mixed together in giant silos to homogenize the flavor and chemical composition. When you buy these phantom brands, you are buying the commodity surplus. Milk that meets the legal minimum safety standards but fails to meet the higher protein or butterfat criteria reserved for premium labels. It is milk engineered for volume, stripped of the distinct terroir that characterizes high-welfare dairy. Because these lines are price-locked to compete with discounters, the pressure on the suppliers is immense. This downward pressure forces farmers to push herds to their biological limits, often relying on feed that boosts volume at the expense of nutritional density. You are saving pennies at the checkout, but you are bringing home a product that is effectively nutritional water, whitened by industrial processing. If you believe that transparency in our food system is non-negotiable and that consumers deserve to know exactly where their dairy comes from, taking a moment to like this video helps us signal to the algorithm that these investigations matter. It supports the channel in continuing to peel back the labels on the products we take for granted. Moving down the aisle, we encounter the second major red flag, the ultra-processed, long-life budget brands often found in discount retailers and convenience chains. Brands like Happy Shopper or the generic UHT cartons tucked away on the bottom shelves of corner shops represent the extreme end of the sterilization spectrum. To achieve shelf stability that allows milk to sit unrefrigerated for months, this milk is subjected to ultra-high temperature processing. While UHT is safe, the budget versions of these brands often utilize older, more aggressive heating techniques to ensure zero spoilage during long supply chain journeys. This aggressive thermal shock denatures the whey proteins, causing them to unravel and release sulfur compounds. This is the source of that distinct cooked or eggy smell that hits you when you open the carton. But the issue goes beyond just the sensory experience. The heat treatment destroys a significant portion of the heat-sensitive vitamins, particularly B12, and alters the structure of the calcium, making it potentially less bioavailable. You are essentially drinking a white liquid that mimics the appearance of milk, but lacks the enzymatic vitality of the fresh product. The third entry on our avoid list requires a closer look at the Barista-style milks that have flooded the market, specifically the non-organic dairy versions marketed by brands like Break or generic supermarket editions. While designed to froth perfectly for your morning coffee, investigate the ingredients list. To achieve that stable foam without the natural fat content of high-quality Jersey milk, these brands often introduce acidity regulators like dipotassium phosphate and stabilizers like Gellan gum. You are no longer buying simple dairy. You are buying a chemistry set designed to perform a mechanical function, frothing, rather than providing nourishment.
The addition of these industrial emulsifiers is a direct admission that the base quality of the milk is insufficient to hold a structure on its own. They are masking a thin, watery product with additives to simulate the richness that should come naturally from a healthy cow on a grass-fed diet. We must also address the filtered milk phenomenon, dominated by giants like Crevendale and Arla's Big Milk. While these are marketed as premium products, they represent a different kind of trap. The filtration process pushes milk through ceramic filters to remove bacteria, which indeed extends the shelf life significantly, sometimes up to 3 weeks after opening. However, this obsession with sterility creates a product that is essentially in stasis. By removing all bacteria, including the beneficial microflora that can aid in digestion, and then subjecting it to pasteurization, you are left with a dead milk. For many consumers, the extended shelf life encourages bulk buying, meaning the milk you drink at the end of the fortnight has been sitting in plastic for weeks. We need to talk about that plastic, because the opaque white bottles used by these brands are not just a design choice. They are a necessity to hide the fact that the milk inside, stripped of its natural bacterial defense system, is highly susceptible to light oxidation. Yet, even with these precautions, the long residence time in high-density polyethylene bottles allows for the migration of plasticizers into the lipid-rich milk. You are paying a premium for the privilege of drinking old, sterile milk that has had ample time to interact with its container. This chemical migration is subtle, often undetectable to the palate, but cumulatively significant. When you ingest WIS compounds alongside the denatured proteins of ultra-pasteurized milk, you are introducing a cocktail of industrial byproducts into your system that your body was never designed to process. This brings us directly to the next category of offenders, a group of brands that arguably commit a greater deception than the sterile milk producers. These are the fortified and growth milk brands, found predominantly in the ambient aisle, marketed aggressively towards parents of young children. You have likely seen the packaging: bright colors, cartoons of happy cows, and bold claims about added iron, calcium, and vitamins essential for development. It seems like the responsible choice for a growing family. However, if you turn the carton over and read the ingredient list, something the manufacturers bank on you not doing, the reality is starkly different. To keep these added vitamins stable in liquid form for months on end, these brands cannot simply use fresh milk. They utilize a base of reconstituted milk powder mixed with water, which is then heavily processed with stabilizers. The most concerning addition in several of these popular UK growth milk brands is the inclusion of maltodextrin or similar carbohydrate fillers. They are essentially bulking up the milk with processed sugars to make it more palatable to children, hooking them on a sweeter taste profile that makes transitioning to regular, fresh milk difficult later on. You are not buying a health product. You are buying a milkshake disguised as a nutritional staple. The added vitamins are often of low bioavailability, meaning your child's body absorbs very little of them compared to the nutrients found naturally in fresh whole foods. You are paying a premium price for cheap milk powder, water, sugar, and a multivitamin pill crushed inside. This philosophy of engineering milk rather than farming it leads us to the next major red flag in the dairy aisle, the Barista editions. In the last 5 years, the UK market has been flooded with specific blends designed for home coffee machines, promising the perfect microphone for your morning latte. While we often scrutinize plant-based barista milks for their seed oil content, we frequently give dairy barista milks a free pass, assuming they are just high-protein milk. They are not. To achieve that glossy, stable foam that doesn't split when it hits hot, acidic coffee, standard pasteurization isn't enough. Many of these barista dairy brands add acidity regulators, most commonly dipotassium phosphate or trisodium citrate. These are buffering agents used to force the milk proteins to remain suspended under heat stress.
While deemed safe for consumption in small quantities, you are essentially drinking a chemistry experiment designed for aesthetics, not nutrition. Furthermore, to ensure the texture is thick and creamy, some of these brands actually add vegetable oils, often rapeseed oil, back into the dairy milk. If this investigation into hidden ingredients is helping you decode the labels in your fridge, a like on this video helps us continue these deep dives and expose more industry secrets. We must also confront the filtered milk giants. These brands command the highest price point in the chiller cabinet, selling an image of unparalleled purity. The marketing suggests that the filtration process removes impurities to give you a cleaner taste. While it is true that ceramic filtration removes bacteria that cause souring, allowing the milk to stay fresh for weeks, it also strips the milk of its character. But the real issue here isn't what is taken out, it is what is hidden by the process. Filtration allows these massive dairy conglomerates to source milk from a much wider and often lower quality network of farms. Because the filtration and subsequent heavy processing will neutralize any bacterial load, there is less incentive to maintain the highest hygiene standards at the farm level compared to a raw or gently pasteurized producer. The technology acts as a safety net for mediocrity. You are paying double the price of standard milk for a product that has been mechanically separated, heavily processed, and standardized to within an inch of its life. It is a product of engineering designed to survive the logistics of a supermarket supply chain, not to nourish you. The deception deepens when we look at the farmhouse-style brands that are actually owned by the major supermarket chains. This is where the illusion of choice truly evaporates. You might see 3 different bottles with 3 different pastoral names, Willow Farm, Valley Spire, or similar rustic titles, suggesting small-scale local provenance. In reality, investigations have frequently shown that these are often phantom brands. The milk inside these different bottles often comes from the exact same central processing plant, sourced from a massive pool of industrial dairy farms where cows never see a blade of grass. The only difference is the label and the price point. By creating these tiered brands, supermarkets create a false hierarchy of quality, tricking you into trading up to a mid-tier brand that is identical to the budget option, just with better graphic design. This practice of fictional farms has been criticized by farming unions for years, yet it persists because it works. It disconnects you from the reality of production. When you buy a bottle stamped with a fake farm name, you cannot trace the animal welfare standards or the antibiotic usage of the herd. You are buying into a story, not a supply chain. And the antibiotic usage is a critical factor we need to address next, because the overuse of medication in these intensive mega-dairies is creating a silent crisis that ends up in your glass. This silent crisis is driven by the sheer biological pressure placed on these animals. In the pursuit of driving down the price per pint to compete in the fierce supermarket price wars, dairy cows in these intensive systems are pushed to their physiological limits. High-yield Holsteins are bred to produce volumes of milk that their bodies struggle to sustain, leading to high rates of mastitis, a painful udder infection, and lameness from standing on concrete floors for the majority of their lives. To keep this machinery running, the industry relies heavily on antibiotics, not just to treat sick animals, but often to prevent disease in conditions that would otherwise breed it. This is where the consumer concern shifts from animal welfare directly to human health. The overuse of antibiotics in livestock farming is a primary driver of antimicrobial resistance, one of the gravest public health threats facing us today.
When you purchase one of these 12 bottom-tier or fake farm brands, you are inadvertently funding a system that accelerates the development of superbugs, bacteria that are resistant to the very medicines we rely on to treat human infections. The milk in that plastic jug might be pasteurized and safe from bacteria in the immediate sense, but the system that produced it is creating a long-term biological hazard.
The supermarkets know this is a sensitive topic, which is why those fictional farm labels are designed to look so traditional and wholesome. They use the aesthetics of the 1950s to mask the industrial reality of the 2020s. If this investigation into the hidden mechanics of the grocery supply chain is helping you see past the marketing, a like on this video helps us signal to the algorithm that consumers demand transparency. And if you want to ensure you don't miss our upcoming deep dive into the deceptive labeling of supermarket bread, subscribing now will keep you ahead of the curve. So now that we have exposed the brands to avoid, the generic store brands, the fictitious farm labels like Tesco's Creamfields or Aldi's Cowbell, and the discount lines that prioritize volume over value, what is the alternative? You cannot simply stop buying milk, but you can change who you buy it from. The goal is to move your money away from the opaque milk pools and towards traceable supply chains. Your first line of defense is the organic label. In the UK, organic standards are strictly regulated. Cows on organic farms must have access to pasture during the grazing season, and the routine use of antibiotics is strictly prohibited. When you see the Soil Association logo, you are buying a guarantee that the milk did not come from a zero-grazing mega-dairy. It is a higher welfare standard that directly translates to a higher quality product. However, organic isn't the only way forward. There is a growing movement of free-range dairy, often identified by the Pasture Promise logo. This specific certification guarantees that the cows have been grazed outside for at least 180 days a year. It ensures that the milk in your bottle came from traditional farming methods, where cows eat grass, not just soy and grain in a shed. By seeking out these labels, you are supporting a network of farmers who have refused to industrialize their herds, often at great financial risk. Furthermore, we are seeing a resurgence of the direct-to-consumer model. The modern milkman is back, often connecting local consumers directly with independent dairies within their own county. While the price point per pint is higher than the loss leaders found in the discount aisle, the money goes directly to the producer, bypassing the supermarket squeeze entirely. This ensures the farmer gets a fair price, allowing them to maintain high welfare standards without cutting corners. Ultimately, the power to dismantle the dominance of these 12 worst offenders lies in your weekly shop. Supermarkets operate on thin margins and massive data sets. They track every barcode scanned. If consumers collectively stop reaching for the fictional farm brands and start prioritizing transparency, the retailers will be forced to pivot. They created these deceptive brands because they thought you wouldn't notice the difference. They banked on the idea that a picture of a rolling hill was enough to silence your questions. The next time you stand in front of that chiller cabinet under the harsh fluorescent lights, remember what that cheap price tag is actually paying for. It pays for the decline of British farming, the compromise of animal welfare, and the obfuscation of the truth. You have the list of brands to avoid. You know the red flags to look for. The choice you make at the checkout is the only signal these corporations understand. Protect your cart, protect your health, and demand a dairy industry that is as clean as the milk implies.